Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. It's time for another GoBots review. Now, earlier in the year, at the start of the year rather, we did make a point of starting the year off with the leader GoBots. Then, about in May, we did two of their co-stars from the series, so here we are, 4 months later again, and we're going to finish off the last of the stars of the Challenge of the GoBots cartoon. First up, as usual, is the Renegade GoBot. This time around, it will be Cop-Tur. Now, Cop-Tur was one of the original GoBots released in 1984. Due to him being a star of the show, he would be on the shelves in 1985 and would be discontinued in 1986 when the line was retired. Cop-Tur is one of the harder of the GoBots to find complete and intact due to the heavy amount of chrome on his body and a relatively small part that is very easy to lose. At any rate, why don't we take a good look here at Cop-Tur. Just like in the cartoon, Cop-Tur can hold his large rotor blade as a weapon, which looks pretty impressive. Looks kind of twisted and weird, but it does give off that vicious vibe being in the chrome color here. At any rate, let's take a look at some of his articulation. Cop-Tur can rotate his arm at the shoulder all the way around. Thus, of course, his arm does fold inward like so. That's more to convert him, but it can fold in at multiple angles, so you do get a fair amount of articulation with it. This one's kind of stiff, but we'll do it here with the other blade, with the other one with the blade there. Cross guard block or something. He has a joint here at his hips that allows his legs to bend backward, like so. It's more for converting him than anything else. He does have a joint at the knee, but it makes his legs bend the wrong way, but he can bring his leg up about so far. Of course, there's also the other problem with Cop-Tur, the fact that he's got a fair amount of metal here in his upper body. In fact, there's so much that the joints for bending his legs at the hip tends to wear over multiple conversions, and it does cause his body to arc backward like so. So now he's kind of looking up at us, which gives kind of a weird look to him. But again, that's playwear, so there isn't too much you can do about that. At any rate, let's convert Cop-Tur. We'll start by removing the rotor from his hands. To convert Cop-Tur, you first make sure his arms are in the vertical position, and then you'll fold them at the shoulder over his chest like so. Then turn him to the side here. You'll straighten his legs out, bend them up at the hip like so, and bend them at the knee like so. They're supposed to be flush against the body, but again, playwear will cause them to droop a bit like this one does. And then, of course, you'll spread his legs out a little bit so you can attach a tiny rotor at the back of his feet, and place the large rotor into the hole in his backside. And there you have his alternate mode. He's a sci-fi era style helicopter. Cop-Tur is one of four Renegades that were sci-fi inspired. They were the first of the machine robo toys to be released, and they went for a more sci-fi appeal instead of going after realistic vehicles. Of course, the most prominent one in this group that was with him was Psykill, but it also applies to Fightor, who was reviewed earlier this year, and to Tank, who has yet to be reviewed. But at any rate, as far as looks for it goes, it's not bad. I mean, you don't really have a helicopter to compare it to, so it makes it really hard to judge it too harshly. The cockpit, though, I believe is a little on the small side, but again, since it's made to look like a fictitious helicopter and not a real one, it's hard to judge it too harshly on that alone. Plus, you at least do get the spinning rotor at the top. And the back one you have to crank manually all the time. It sits in too snugly, but hey, for a toy helicopter like this, that's about all you needed. Now we'll take a quick look at Cop-Tur's accessories. We're going to start with the large rotor, the more prominent and the easier to find piece. As you can see, it's all done up in chrome, so naturally the value of it will be determined by how good the chrome is on it. The blade, the two sections of the blades are connected together, so they do tend to wobble a bit loose, as you can see here. So that's something to watch out for. The blades do tend to get a little off-centered, just a bit, but shouldn't affect play value. They do tend to droop. It's probably not that easy to see here on the camera. Oh, here's one. This one right here. This one's drooping. I don't know if that's from the way it was stored by the previous owner, because this isn't my Cop-Tur from childhood. I had a fake Cop-Tur when I was growing up, so, and I can tell on it the rotors did droop on the fake just as well. Of course, as you can see, the plastic for the rotors is very thin, so it will stress and break very easily. And of course, you got the bit here at the bottom. This is where most of the wear will be, since it connects into his hand or on his back. Then you've got the most notorious piece to find for Cop-Tur, the tail rotor. I mean, there's nothing fancy about it. It's just a circle with 3 blades inside it. But as you can imagine, since he doesn't hold on to this piece in his robot mode, this part is lost very easily and is very, very difficult to track down. About as bad as Pumper's gun. For those of you who saw the review of Pumper, his gun is a very big pain to find, and, well, since Cop-Tur is a more prominent character thanks to the cartoon, there's more demand for this. As you can see, it just barely fits in my thumbnail, so it tells you how small this piece is. I was fortunate to find a dealer that had this toy complete, so yes, it can be done, it can be found. Just expect a fair amount of difficulty in the process. Here he is looking skyward again. Maybe Batman's up above us or something somewhere. At any rate, to talk more about Cop-Tur, unfortunately the GoBot toys did not have any tech specs, but I did find on the internet, after searching, Cop-Tur did have a prototype tech spec that Tonka should have probably used for him. But see what you think about this. Cold-hearted Cop-Tur has a sharp mind and an even sharper rotating propeller arm. he secretly plans to send Psykill into a tailspin and take over the enemy GoBots. This almost sounds familiar, doesn't it? And apparently, early on, Cop-Tur was going to be portrayed very similarly to Starscream of the Transformers. But for whatever reason, Tonka decided not to print these with the toys, and they paid for it dearly after the Transformers came out. In the cartoon, though, Cop-Tur was played in the opposite sense. He wasn't featured with a sharp mind. He was the buffoon of the group. Granted, he could still do things, but he was more played for comic relief than the more crazed Crasher. Part of that could have probably been due to the fact of him always using his rotor blade as a weapon. They downplayed his violent nature a bit. Because let's face it, any toys that had large rotor blades like this did tend to be a little dangerous to us kids, especially if we could get the blades going at a decent rate of speed. A sadder note, though, for Cop-Tur's fate. Cop-Tur wound up being cut early in the GoBots movie, Battle of the Rock Lords, due to the fact that his voice actor died during pre-production of the movie. Cop-Tur made an appearance in one scene only and was voiced by one of the other actors, and then would mysteriously disappear for the rest of the film. But then again, Battle of the Rock Lords is not fondly remembered by many of the fans, so maybe he knew something we didn't. At any rate, what are my thoughts of Cop-Tur? Cop-Tur has always been one of my favorites, especially since it wasn't until I became an adult collector that I realized the one I had growing up was a fake. So, imagine my surprise at learning that growing up. All my childhood dreams crushed. No, at any rate, the toy is pretty good as far as GoBots are concerned. It's not perfect by any stretch, but he's certainly not bad either. The only thing that made him bad was the cartoon. I think the buffoonery that was done of him and the redesign of his head to have the more beak-like mouth was kind of stupid. But I think if they had went with the original plans of making him somewhat more like Starscream, that might have worked out better for him. And I kind of would have liked to have seen that. Or maybe if there was a Transformer GoBot crossover, have Starscream and Cop-Tur team up together and then try to see which one of them could one-up the other at disposing their leader. That might have been kind of fun. That might be kind of fun to see. All in all, though I do note the toy does have some shortcomings. I mean, there is the over-excessive use of the chrome on him. Not only on the rotor blades, on the entirety of his arms and on the upper portions of his legs. So he does suffer from chrome wear a lot, and the toy does tend to show its play wear. Not as bad as some of the others do, but it is still noticeable. But in any event, I'm going to put Cop-Tur in the middle tier. So he shouldn't be judged solely by how he was used in the cartoon, but by the potential that the toy could have brought. And I believe that if Tonka would have went with these original bios for the GoBots, I think they would have turned out a little bit better in actuality. But I think in this case, I think Cop-Tur isn't too bad. Out of the four sci-fi-like vehicles, he's certainly one of the better ones. They certainly have done worse, and eventually we'll get around to seeing that worst. And that concludes my review for the Renegade GoBot Cop-Tur. If If you like the video, leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button down below and join up within our ranks. And also don't forget to hit the bell next to it so you'll be notified when new videos are posted. And also don't forget, share your thoughts of Cop-Tur in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying catch you all later.